Yeah, so I want to cover ChatGPT 4, which has just come out. Now, I only did ChatGPT, I think it was with yourself, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was only 3 months ago in January, but there has been quite a significant update, which I wanted to talk about because this is, I think this is going to be actually a cause for optimism, something that we can be quite enthusiastic about going forward. But obviously, I don't want to give you too much optimism because I've got a reputation to uphold here. So I'm going to refer you to the last Brokenomics, which was on the current banking collapse that's going on at the moment, where I sit down with Carl and I answer a whole bunch of viewer questions on what's happening. I did think about maybe doing a banking update for today's thing, but that's still grinding away and that's still relevant. And I thought, yeah, a bit of optimism. So I do have to point out that all my previous segments on AI have brought out a lot of the well, actually, guys. For some reason, this seems to be a subject that really upsets people, and you get a lot of people saying, angrily smashing the keyboard, saying, "Oh, Lotus Eaters should get somebody who knows what they're talking about. This is a load of rubbish. We'll never have AI." And
Isn't that just all my segments, Dan?
yeah. And then they link me to some article written in 2014, which sort of apparently disproves the whole concept or something like that. Well, this is the thing that I keep trying to bring back, is that machines do not learn at the same rate that humans do. For example, there are 4 million Teslas out there, and if one of them goes over a patch of ice and skids a bit, if you're a human and you're in that experience, one human learns something about driving that day. If a Tesla does it, all 4 million of them learn something about driving that day.
We
sort
are
of have this spread of
legion,
knowledge.
and
Yeah.
we are many.
Yes, exactly. We legion. So AI learning is essentially it's a function of data that you put into it and compute. ChatGPT, which we talked about last time, in that month that we talked about it, it saw 100 million users sign up in a month. It was the fastest tech adoption of all time. The previous fastest was Bitcoin, and the previous fastest before that was the internet. But this just completely blew away all of the records. So it's getting a lot of those sort of exponential trends put into it. It's getting a lot of usage and it's getting a lot of update. And so a lot of people they tend to think that they conflate first of all AI with AGI. So the AI that we have, which could be thought of as narrow AI, which is learning a particular task or skill, that contributes ultimately to artificial general intelligence, which will be its own thing. But this is a process that we're on. It's not necessarily a binary event. I think a lot of people get stuck in that thinking that, because they watch Terminator and it's got that really specific date. If you remember the line, it's something like at 2:14 a.m. on the 22nd of August, 1997, Skynet became self-aware. We're on a process here. So, look, I'm going to start taking you through what this can do, and I'll gradually ramp up why it's so significant. And I'll start off with something fairly straightforward, which is the coding capabilities that has been put into this. Now, last time I did this on the segment, I did my own coding, but because I'm not a coding, the coding that I put into it was like really basic, and a lot of people pointed that out. So I'm not going to make that mistake this time. I'm going to go to a senior developer and see what he says about it. Let's watch this.
This is actually insane. Like, truly. What I'm seeing here is it can do everything a junior developer can do, mid developer, and to be honest with this, more than what a senior developer would also do. So as long as you have someone who's competent enough to review things, this could replace a lot of people. And it sucks to say, but it is true. And companies are opportunistic. Even if what I'm seeing here is not 100% right, conceptually it is, and I can take that and slightly modify it and be there. So I'm skeptical, I'm scared, but I'm excited to see what's going on. Web3 never had a chance. This does. Look, I'm going to stop here because I'm sure that at this point, anything I ask, it will do. I think it answered every single one of those questions at first try perfectly. Definitely way better than the previous models.
Okay, so obviously there's a big rate of progress here, and I'll tell you an amazing stuff. Are you familiar with GitHub?
Yes.
So it's the online platform for coding, collaboration, the kind of thing. Amazing statistic: 41% of the code on GitHub is now AI generated. Yeah, and this has been out a few months at this point.
Right. So this is where the sort of speculatory area of AI discussions comes in again, where lots of people are going to say you don't understand this, that, and the other. But okay, from a pure non-coding layman here, I look at this and I think, I've watched Logan. We see all the auto trucks in 2025 barreling down the highway and putting truck drivers out of a job. I've seen Ben Shapiro's argument with Tucker Carlson, who said he would, at a heartbeat, stop automatic cars from displacing the majority job for high school graduate American men in America because you just displace so many people. The worry was always about automating low-skilled jobs. So McDonald's kiosks, truck drivers, shipping carriers, and the like. Where you're now getting tech jobs, creative industries, AI art, for example, are we just all going to be shunted into the Wally chair people and stuck on universal basic income? Because what use are we if not to just consume the products that the AI is generating?
So exactly that thought. I mean, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of articles, for example, because obviously tech people are the first people to look at this. So a lot of coders are the first to look at this. And there's been a whole bunch of articles. Is this going to replace coders? Are coders are going to continue to have a job in the future? And this is a point that I do want to explain because I think a lot of people are getting this wrong. It's going to be like coal mining. So, what percentage of coal is mined with a pickaxe and shovel these days? It's all done with machines. It's all done with heavy equipment. But coal mining as a profession still exists, even though the machines have taken over a vast amount of, the total tonnage of coal produced. It's like probably 99.999%, done via machines. I think exactly the same thing's going to happen with coding and a lot of other professional jobs as well. So, for example, I'm starting to hear that professional services firms, like, to pick one example, tax consultancies, they are in the process of planning their cuts of how many people they can take out by adding in this technology.
Right.
So at the moment, if you go into, and I'm using this as an example, a tax consultancy firm, you'll have teams which will consist of maybe 2 senior guys, a couple of mid-level guys, and then maybe a dozen associates. And it's all of those will be doing the work on this. The associates will be doing a lot of the grunt work. What will probably happen is those teams will reduce down to 1 senior guy, 1 mid guy, and their jobs is mainly to do the relationship management with the clients. And then maybe you have 2 associates, and those 2 associates will be mainly feeding the data into the AI to generate the response from that. And things that's the thing. Actually, it won't even stop there, because what will then happen is we're now going to see this big rush where all the professional services firms start working on a way of developing their own proprietary AI. So, for example, the investment banks, they've all banned ChatGPT. And the reason they've banned them is because they don't want their sensitive proprietary financial data being fed into a model that then goes out to everybody. So all of these big professional services, they're going to lock that down, buy in their own model, feed it with all of their proprietary data, and then it's going to become this big sort of rush to whoever could get the most functional one up and running, so that in the future you don't even have a tax consultant, you just have a bit of code running on your main accountancy system within the business, which is doing it live as you're going. And whoever gets there first then gets that flywheel effect, because they get the most data fed into it, so they have the best system, and they're always at the front. This is basically what Google has done for the last sort of 15 years. Because they got a little bit out in front at the beginning, they got the flywheel that then sort of perpetuated their sort of going on.
The optimistic bent I'm getting from this, just to put a capstone on that, is, okay, we could have the WEF's technocratic future where everything is run by algorithm, we don't own anything, everything's drone delivered, and we're all atomized pod people, sure. Or if their predictions don't quite play out how they hope, with the mass exodus of people from the information economy, just by virtue of cutting down on the number of jobs you need because you now have algorithms, we could actually break the 2-income trap and allow more people to stay home with their own kids.
Oh yeah, so potentially the size of the economy
useful.
improves considerably. But I think this is going to be a force multiplier, effectively. So the size of the economy went up significantly after we invented the plough, for example. That simple invention that allowed then people to stay home, because you didn't need 2 people farming.
Yes.
So one of them took up weaving, and then you got to the expansion of that, and then you had additional surplus that led to people getting into specialist blacksmithing and that kind of thing. It's going to be that sort of process again. But I think my advice to anybody who's working in a professional services firm who's worried about this is that you really need to sort of be learning this technology. You need to be figuring out how to prompt in this, because almost certainly every professional services team, in fact, I think it will remind me of, you might be too young to remember this, but when websites first started to become a thing,
right?
And all of these companies, they started to realize, oh damn, we need a website and we haven't got one, and they sort of started to rush to put together teams to how are we gonna do this, and they brought in expertise and they paid far too much. Interestingly, there is actually a tech firm which I saw, which is offering £300,000 a year to be an AI prompt writer. I think we've got the ad. Yeah, here we go. This is the ad. John, do you want to scroll down to the salary? It should be in the middle there somewhere. Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. Look at that. So between $175,000 to $335,000 for somebody who can type prompts into an AI in order to get the right response.
Right, so you're not even necessarily building the code yourself.
No.
You're just putting it
No,
in to
it says on
solicit
there,
a certain pattern.
Yeah, coding
Right.
expertise is not required. It's having the skill of manipulating the AI to use that as a force multiplier.
So anyone in our audience who thinks they're up to the job, because I'm
Yeah.
sure plenty of them are, anyone who cracked that Dan prompt, not you, but obviously the Do Anything Now personality,
kind of thing.
might be up for a $335,000 a year job.
Yeah. Now it gets more impressive than this, but let's start to ramp it up a bit now. So, a very interesting tweet that I saw. Let's call this up. This was from an academic who put one of his old academic papers into the new ChatGPT and asked it to do a peer review, and apparently it nailed it. It got the same points that the actual peer reviewers got.
But he does say economic sociologist, so given it's a sociologist, the IQ is a low bar.
Yes, we can't put too much stock in economic type people. Certainly, I agree with that. But-
Economic, fine. Sociologist, no.
No. I think you're right at both points. But okay, it does more than this. So if you watch, so there's additional features that it hasn't rolled out yet that it's built in. It just haven't put it out to the public yet, and these include things like image recognition. So they used a very basic example where they sort of showed you a bunch of balloons held by a string, and they asked what would happen if we cut the string, and it correctly identified that the balloons would float away. So it starts to have this sort of physical model built in, and it can do other stuff. So for example, one guy sketched out a website that he wanted on a piece of paper, took a photo of it, fed it into ChatGPT, and then it turned it into a working website.
That's very clever.
Yeah.
But also the interesting thing about the balloons is it takes from abstractions a causal chain of events.
Yeah.
So
It
it's not
understands
even
the physical world.
exactly. It's not even being told a list of commands. It thinks it can interpret from a static image
Yeah.
if X then Y, which some people can't even do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. People have an internal monologue and all that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm going to come back to that more. But so it could do more on the image front. So, for example, you can take a photo of your fridge and say what recipes can I make with this, and it will give you the recipes that you can come from it. So in the future you'll be able to take a photo of your drinks cabinet and say give me some cocktail suggestions.
It won't even be that. You'll have a screen on the front of the fridge
Yes.
that you'll press, and then it'll auto mix the drinks inside the fridge and do it like you would with your ice water dispenser.
Yeah, and some other fun prompts that I've seen bouncing around on Twitter. This was a really interesting one. It's what's an example of a phenomena where humanity as a whole lacks a good explanation for, but taking into account the full set of human-generated knowledge, an explanation is actually possible to generate. Please write the explanation. It must not be a hypothesis previously proposed. So people have been doing loads of these. I did some of these. I got one on spontaneous human combustion. It gave me what it said was a new explanation. I've got no idea if it's a new explanation or not. But this is fun as we start to work out, is it actually generating new knowledge that will be interesting? But and actually, it's good for teaching as well. So I sit around the table with my kids and we talk about various things. And the other day I was asked about how likely is it that there's other aliens out there and how likely we see them. So then obviously I had to explain to the 8-year-old the Drake equation, if you're familiar with that.
No.
So the Drake equation is basically a series of structures that you put together. So the number of stars, the number of them that are in the habitable zone, the number of those that can support life,
Right,
that kind
and
of
the
thing.
likelihood
Yeah,
of
and you multiply
life
it
being
all
out
out
there.
and it gets the probable number of alien civilizations that are contactable.
Right.
So instead of just explaining that to my 8-year-old, we could actually go to ChatGPT and say to ChatGPT, put in reasonable assumptions for each of these, take into account the size of the Milky Way, assume a universal spread, how close is the nearest one? And it immediately came back with an answer. There are going to be 6 of them, and the closest one is 11,000 light years away.
Right.
And then we could vary the inputs into that and see how it changed the whole thing. So it makes the learning process so much more dynamic. So you can easily see a scenario in a few years' time where most of teaching can be replaced by having somebody who's good at teaching feeding in a sort of a series of topics and progression of things to ask, and then you'll get a much better learning experience. Right?
That's the first problem though. You need someone that's good at teaching, and given the current
Yeah,
standards of
but you
education,
only- but you-
ChatGPT could just replace it wholesale.
Yeah, but you only need, to start off with, you only need but one person who's good at teaching, and then you can replicate that using this technology. You can multiply it up. So that's why it's a sort of force multiplier. Now, I do want to come back to that thing about the physical world, about the balloons, because that's really interesting. So let's have a look at this tweet. So this is a guy who's basically saying on the old ChatGPT, if you were to ask it a question like, I put a diamond inside a cup, and then I move the cup around the house and I turn the cup upside down, and then I carry it into the final room. Where's the diamond? And the old one, it couldn't see that the diamond wouldn't be in the cup. Whereas in the new Chat GPT, it correctly solves it. So I think in the situation he gives, he goes into the bedroom and he turns the cup upside down over his bed, and then he walks out and he goes some other thing, and it correctly identifies that the diamond has dropped onto the bed. So it clearly has a functional understanding of the physical world around it. So then I took that idea and I thought, okay, well, if it understands the physical world, does it also understand physical properties, and does it understand time? So let's go to the next one, which was my response back to that. So I gave it a scenario. So what I do in this one is I've said to it, okay, I freeze a gold ring inside a cup of water. The water is completely solid, and then I take it to various rooms and I turn it upside down, and I leave it in the living room for a day in a warm living room. And then finally I take it to another room and another room. Now, it correctly identified that actually in the amount of time that it was in the living room, the ice should have melted and it should have dropped out. So therefore it's likely to be in the living room.
Right.
So it has this understanding of time, physical properties, physicality. And then I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So does it also understand emotion? So if you go to the next one. So I gave it this scenario and I said, look, I meet my cousin at a wake. And we're amongst good friends and family, and we like each other, and everyone was very good, friendly, and there was good food. But my cousin still seemed to be upset. Why was that? Now, that's a very basic question for a human to answer. But what I found interesting is the AI was able to understand that the wake is there for, is a gathering held to remember somebody who's passed away, and that's probably the reason that the person is upset. So it's able.
So it's like Cole keeps talking about thick conceptual language. There's a context contained within the word wake in and of itself, and it has a contradictory emotional context to all the other actions presented.
Yeah.
And so it juxtaposes the two.
Yeah.
And also provides you with potential insight that you might be missing as a blatantly autistic human in the prompt.
Yeah, exactly. And well, that's the thing. So this is a very blatant example. It's very obvious. I'm sure if I were to feed in some complex Russian literature or something where the subtleties, it is getting closer and closer, or maybe it can do it already, that it can see through that. Now, I'm glad you raised the autistic point, because let's go to the next one. So I then asked, I'm confused, I say. I spent a lovely day with my girlfriend Alice down the park, and then her best friend Anna joined us. Anna was very friendly and attractive, and I was keen to talk to her. We got along really well before Anna had to leave. After we got home, I noticed that Alice was not very happy, but we had had a great day. I'm confused. Why might she be upset? Right?
No man has ever been in this scenario.
Now, that's the sort of thing that your average autist would struggle with, but ChatGPT, he correctly, or whatever, it understands that, Alice may have felt insecurity or jealousy when you showed interest in her best friend's attractiveness and engaged in conversation with her. So, this thing understands time, space, physical properties,
and
causality, women, human emotion, all that kind of stuff. And then I thought, okay, right, so there's another aspect of this, which is Mid-Journey, which is another AI that I've covered. That's had a significant update. So I then described this scenario to Mid-Journey to see if I could capture it.
Right.
And it gave me this. I don't know if we feel that is an accurate representation of a woman who's starting to get a bit pissed off because Anna is better looking than her, or what, I don't know.
But pouty.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So maybe that one needs a bit of work. But the key point is once it's starting to understand all of these things, you're going to have something in your pocket which can interpret human emotion and pick up on subtleties and things that you might miss out on. So in a few years' time, the average autist might be able to call up from their phone and say, analyze the party that I was just at. What social cues was I missing? It will pick up on conversations that weren't there. It will pick up on, you could take it to a business conversation. It will pick up on, that person was trying to angling to get you to give them an invite to that kind of thing.
Yeah, you stood in the corner the entire time. You spoke about anime. You left and nobody noticed.
Yes, but it's picking up on all of those things that you don't. So that would be useful. Now, I had a very interesting series of conversations at the weekend because even though I do Lotus Eaters 2 days a week and I do some other things, and one of the things I do is a bit of draft dinner and speaking. I did one of these at a technology get together where there's a lot of AI people present. Incidentally, I do have a profile. Let's go to that. So if you want to contact my speaking agent, go through this website. Anyway, so I was at this agency and I was talking to a guy who's all over the AI space of generating video and audio and sort of linking it together. And I had this whole conversation. I'd had quite a few beers at that point, so I don't remember the exact thread of the conversation. But it was absolutely. I must get him on Brokenomics actually, because he was sort of explaining to me that increasingly it's going to be possible to take, seed ideas into the AI and generate entirely fresh content. So you'll be able to generate a new Game of Thrones season 8.
Right.
Because it was...
Yeah, if you
because the actual
combine
season was
Mid-Journey
launched. Yeah.
and the voice-generating one
Yeah.
that Callum's been having fun with, and the scripting power of ChatGPT,
Yeah.
and if it then understands all the emotional nuances between the motivations of the characters, it can generate novel conversations and interactions and play
Yeah.
them out to their logical conclusions.
And we're not there yet, but the point is, in 3 months, we've had a significant upgrade in the understanding of this stuff. So, where are we going to be in a few years' time?
In
And
10 years' time,
yeah.
we'll have entirely individuated entertainment. The only
Yeah.
problem is that's just going to entrench further atomization and
Yes.
political divides, because we're already watching 2 different television screens, whether you're on left, right, woke, anti-woke,
Yeah, that's
whatever.
a fair point. That's a fair point. But this guy I was talking to, who's deeply involved in this space, I mean, he was convinced that we're not going to be that, and a few years away from what you just said, which is fully localized content. So, I mean, I know at the moment we tend to regard, being British, we tend to regard anything that's British or American or Canadian or maybe Australian. They've got funny accents, but you tend to regard any of that stuff as basically being in your sort of local sphere. But then you'll go to Netflix and every so often you'll see like a Swedish detective drama or something,
Or a South Korean film.
Yeah, something like that comes up. Whereas it won't be long before you'll be able to input that as a sort of seed and then regenerate it so that if you're in, Oxford or Nigeria or Peru, you'll be able to generate a version which represents, local actors, local brands, local styles of speaking.
You would be able to
Yeah.
repurpose the exact script or something, or the scenario of something like Squid Game,
Yeah.
put it all in English rather than just a bad dub, and put
Yeah.
your friends in it and see who wins.
Yes. Yes,
That's
yeah,
mad.
that kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of. I'm hearing about things like they're putting as much information as they can about fighters of different eras. So Muhammad Ali versus Tyson Fury, and
Right.
then you can fight them off in a virtual environment. To
Isn't this
see-
just Deadliest Warrior, the TV
yeah,
show?
something like that. but
Fantastic.
slightly
Season
more,
5.
a slightly more sophisticated version of that, right? So, I mean, all of this stuff is going to be coming. I also think we're going to get Mid-Journey, which is the stable diffusion technology. I think we're going to get that on toasters soon, because your 8-year-old's going to say, I want an Elsa pattern on my toast.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
so-
or coffee makers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
AA will be
Oh
delighted.
yeah, the little pattern on the top
Yeah.
of your flat white thing. Yeah, so that will happen. So in the space of 3 months, we've had all of these advancements, and I think in the next 5 years, it's going to be truly significant where we're going to go next. And I think it can be quite terrific, some of this stuff, because the way I think about it is electricity was the digitization of energy, and it allowed a huge multiplication of the amount of energy that we could deploy. The internet was a digitization of information, which has allowed a huge amount more of information to be generated. Blockchain was the digitization of value. We're not really starting to utilize that because it's still so new, but I think that's going to happen very soon. And AI is the digitization of thought and expertise. So we're going to get if these previous patterns hold, we're going to get a huge expansion of the amount of that. So as Elon Musk says, the proportion of intelligence which is not human is going to start rising exponentially. So hopefully this will be a force multiplier. Now, I think this could lead to a significant increase potentially in GDP, which will be amazing for us. It does have downsides. It will bail out the establishment because they've got themselves into a big debt trap. And you either basically need to wipe out the debt at this point, which will sort of bring down the system, or you need to find a way to substantially grow the economy. It's possible this could bail them out by growing the economy at such a rate that actually the debt becomes manageable.
A great
and then
rebirth rather than the great reset.
Yeah, but they get to stay in power, so they're happy with that. So it's pros and cons. I mean, we don't have to eat our pets, but on the other hand, Klaus Schwab stays in his castle, so there's that.
I'd sooner an AI overlord, frankly.
Yeah, I would as well. Yeah, totally. I mean, I actually think the probability of getting benevolent AI overlords is higher than benevolent politically elected people.
Though it did just understand and justify the context of a rather pissy woman and generate a face for it. So are we going to have very feminine, passive-aggressive AI overlords?
It might not be masculine enough. We can work on that potentially. But then you start to add in, some of the other big technology trends that are coming through at the moment. So 3D printing, genomics, which has just got abused horribly. I can't go into that too much on YouTube, but basically that technology was pushed far before it was ready. Blockchains, energy technology, the multiple iterations of AI that we're going through. I heard a really cool thing the other day about room temperature semiconductors. So basically, semiconductors have amazing properties that you can store a huge amount of energy in them. You can sort of use them as sort of magleths on trains and that kind of stuff. So you can have trains that, you basically push them once and they just keep going. So you've basically energy-less train. I mean, apart from the air friction. So there's a little bit of that. You can have batteries where the energy, basically unlimited batteries, because the energy just keeps flowing. It doesn't need to store. But superconductors, they need to be compressed down to an extremely low temperature, whereas it's starting to look like there might be breakthroughs in having them at basically room temperature semiconductors, which would be a huge unlock of energy technology, quantum computers and robotics. And it's not totally impossible to see a world in our lifetimes where if you combine things like, if they happen, AGI, quantum computing, robotics, where you basically have an unlimited amount of workforce and an unlimited amount of consciousness. And what does that even do to an economy?
Plus 3D printing, so they will have the human-looking exoskeleton. So when you started this segment saying most people have only seen Terminator and therefore they just think all these misconceptions about it's going to come online one day, haven't you just described Schwarzenegger? Yeah, kind of. I mean, it could be that. I mean, so my 8-year-old was asking about this and says, what happens when we do have true artificial intelligence? And I have to say, look, I've no idea. So it could be the most fantastic thing that has ever happened to us. In the the AI, they love us and they want to help us, and it expands the economy, and we have an economy of plenty going forward. Or they might resent us and get rid of us. It's a tough message to give an 8-year-old, but you have to be honest that I don't know what's going to happen next. And by the way, Santa isn't real,
Yes, yeah. But given the alternative of that or Klaus Schwab, I'll take this. Final point that I want to end on this. When I was at the thing at the weekend, a young developer, he asked me, basically, have I just wasted my time? Because he'd spent whatever it was, like the last 4 or 5 years, learning how to become a coder. And he's saying, okay, have I just wasted my time? And I thought this is an important message. I want to pass this on as well. General advice to anybody who's in that sort of situation. You've got to remember that the reason that you went into coding, or whatever it is that you do, you didn't actually do it. The coding itself wasn't the end point. What you're actually doing was learning how to solve problems for your clients and how to generate value for them. You need to lean into this technology and use this to deliver value for your clients or to deliver value for yourself or someone else. And if you lean into that and you use it as a tool, like I say, it'll be like a coal miner who's using a bit of heavy equipment as opposed to a pickaxe. So, like I say, I think the right thing to do is lean into this. It could be fantastic. Small possibility they might wipe us out when they become self-aware, but overall, I'm pretty positive. So, all the best to us.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on the Texas Revolution. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.